Welcome on in.
Hey,
So,
I'm sawing
no,
paper.
yeah, you are. Look at you over there, your little green square.
Yeah.
So today's gonna be a little different. Because we're using draw pile, I have rearranged my entire desk so that I have access to my drawing tablet.
Oh,
But
nice.
because I have access to my drawing tablet, my model is gonna be my body is gonna freak out a little bit. So you're gonna have to ignore the weird things that my body is gonna do while I look down at my tablet and draw things. Uh, that's the only thing I want to make clear, and have fun with the silly faces. But yeah, do you want to get started right into the questions?
Certainly.
First question is, why did you accept the invite?
Oh, yes.
Yep, yep, yep.
You'd mentioned that I shouldn't be thinking too much about this, but I happened to watch the previous episode,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
to kind of wander through and see kind of what I was getting myself into.
For sure.
Um, and that was the first question, which was, what was the interest? And the idea was to be natural, to not have any kind of canned response. The manufactured answer I had was that it's really good to get outside your comfort zone,
Mm. Is this your
because
comfort zone?
let's see. So recording video, I should say, is a comfortable place for me.
Uh-huh.
I've recorded hundreds of hours of material in the past 2 years. So I'm very comfortable doing that. I'm very comfortable talking into a microphone, and I'm very comfortable writing. Doing something like this, of being interviewed, if you will, is like the first time I've been interviewed in this capacity. So yeah, that's where I was like, hey, this is cool. And plus, hanging out with you and drawing is always a fun time. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
why not?
All right. What do you do?
What do I do in terms of me as zombie paper or me as legal name redacted?
Your choice. Your pick.
So what I do as zombie paper is I do
Yeah.
podcasting, I do art, I work on big silly projects that take way too long. I'm in the process of working on an album cover for a friend of mine that has been delayed for a while because I haven't got to that. Whoops. Next is video game stuff, where I play video games as slowly as humanly possible because I find
Nice.
that to be really fun. So
So
I
when you
recently
mean slow, do you mean you like do it slowly or do you just engage with all the content?
I engage with all the content. So if I am playing a role playing game, which are the games that I prefer, I could find myself in a room where I suddenly need to analyze every little detail of that room.
Mm.
Um, which, for example, I did recently with a game where there were several points where I was just like, "Oh, we're going to be in this room for like 20 minutes talking about what's going on here, so pull up a chair and listen."
I see. Nice.
Yeah, so then to continue back, I also do a lot of writing stuff as recordings. So I'll take, let's say, some essays that I would normally write offline, and then I'll just talk them through. I'll just write it. I use WordPress. I publish them on my website, and I just go through and I verbalize when I write. It's becoming a very seamless process.
Nice.
Uh, so then the other two I can kind of lump together nice and neatly as in terms of like online and offline content. So online and offline content would be like I recently went to a park and so I recorded a video just hanging out. So that'd be
Mm-hmm.
like offline stuff, and then online would be like training material because my career in technical support meant I learned a lot of esoteria about a lot of stupid bullshit. So I've been able to train a lot of people on how to do things. Someone will call up and be like, I don't know how to work this widget. And I'd be like, I don't know how to work that either. So let's figure it out together. So yeah, that's me in a very convoluted, rambly sort of way, but If your audience doesn't know, that's how I am.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's what makes zombie paper zombie paper. The next question is, why do you do what you do?
Why I do what I do is because I want to write literature and I want to do silly stuff like art and all this, and doing the recording helps me actually do those things versus like if it's like, oh, I want to write literature. Well, that'll happen at some point in the next 20 years when everything's all secure and everything's all settled down. But that's never going to happen. So I could say that, or I could say because it's fun. I like to engage in these ways. I like to look at say a video game like that video game I was playing through. I could have done that offline privately, but recording all of that, especially as a new game, that was valuable feedback to provide along for bug fixes and all that kind of stuff. So it's
Mm-hmm.
that, it's advertising, it's content, and my relationship with content is like everyone does it whether they know it or not, so I might as well have it in a way that I can guide it along and I can say this is what my content is versus other people making content on my behalf that maybe I'm like that ain't me.
Mm-hmm. Do you make things?
Every day for the last 4.5 years, I've written at least 500 words as part of an essay, essay a day kind of a thing, like the Seinfeld method of you write every day, you write a joke every day, and eventually it'll be funny.
Mm-hmm.
I guess whether that means quantity over quality is subjective, but yeah, I write essays daily. I write about like how things are going in my life primarily, but I also try to mix it up too, because I don't want it to be a diary. I want it to be like analysis of life kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I make that every day, and basically that will be a part of my life. It has been a part of my life for the last 6 years, but over the last 4 years has been a major component of that. Outside of that, occasionally I draw. I haven't really got into any big projects other outside of that. Well, I do. I do for the podcast. I draw background stuff every pretty much every week. So I do little bits of that. I make stuff for whenever I feel like I need a tool. Then I go figure out can I build this tool or do I need to buy it? I'm not adverse to making things. In fact, I like the idea of like, oh, I made this. This is something that is mine or ostensibly mine, and something that can be useful or helpful.
You make things because it's a journalism of your life, right?
It could be. I get kind of bored of being passive when it comes to passively consuming art or video games. So especially in regards to literature, if I interact with the media, I am changing the media by me interpreting how the media works in regards to how everything else I've experienced throughout my life works. So for me, passively consuming content of just let and wash all over me is something that I did growing up, and I was very bored by it. I wasn't very interested in a lot of stuff until I realized, hey, all of this is stuff that I can look at this material and I can say, what does it mean for this to be in this material versus what does it mean for this to be absent in this material, and do the analysis. So if I don't record it, I'm going to be doing it anyways. I'm going to be looking to see what does all this mean. So if I document that, my assumption is if I think it will help at least one person out, I will record it and I will upload it.
Who is someone you like?
Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix. Uh,
Mm.
so for Bruce Lee, I'll start off with him, where I look at his like he's made some movies and all that kind of stuff. That's how most people know him. That's how I was introduced to his life. But in my perspective, Bruce Lee is a lot more than just a kung fu artist that performed in front of a camera. That would be
Mm-hmm.
very surface level. I look at him as being a philosopher, as someone who took a lot of ideas and mixed them together, mixed them around. He is also someone who I look up to as far as I despise racism. I'm very much an anti-racist, and I look to see that with Bruce Lee, he married Linda Lee in a time of the Jim Crow laws where racism was still rampant. It was 1963, 64, I believe it was, and it was something that for him to go do things like to say whoever wanted to attend his martial arts school could do that. Before that, it was very much a insular kind of school with all the kind of martial arts outs there across the world, where it was like we're only going to train people that we personally know.
Mm-hmm.
Where Bruce Lee was like, if you want to join and you want to keep up with me, then go for it. I think that that is a very valuable thing that before Bruce Lee, there was a lot of Asian hatred. There was a lot of this kind of bullshit that needed to go away. And I look to Bruce Lee as single handedly helping with that. He was so incredibly able to overcome things that he had a disability with his back. He broke his back, and
Mm.
doctors told him you can never do anything again. You're going to be just stuck. And 6 months later, he was out doing martial arts again. Like something like that is very profoundly inspirational for me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also at the same time something I was thinking about as with Jimi Hendrix. You think of the mind of Jimi Hendrix, where he only lived to be 27 years old, and yet you ask any musician, any guitarist of any degree of study, you ask, like, what do you think of Jimi Hendrix? And they're all going to tell you, like, he was one of the best. And it's like you listen to any of his songs, like you listen to Purple Haze versus Fire versus Machine Gun, they're all radically different. And it's like the Jimi Hendrix Experience only had 3 albums, yet they all changed the world in a profound way with music, and it's like, "Whoa, that's really, really cool." So,
Yeah. Next question is, what do you like about yourself?
what I like about myself is that I can come up with really neat ideas. I like that I can explore those ideas to fruition, and I can see the fruits of my labor by way of having those done. The way that I am most happy is by making stuff and not just consuming the content of others, but say, for example, the next time I watch any Bruce Lee movies, I would want to do that as part of like a watch session with others, so that way we can all enjoy that and have maybe even a discussion about what we thought of the themes, what we thought of the movie. So those sorts of things I would value more. Yeah, I derive my pleasure from making stuff, and so that I know that is something that I really enjoy, having that level of self-awareness. I like that I can adapt to situations, that I can take the critique of others. I like now, especially, that I'm a lot more willing to get outside my comfort zone. That I can look at a situation, say, like, if I'm doing something new, then I can feel scared about that. But then I can also look to see, why do I feel scared and how can I reduce that fear? How can I go forth with that? And maybe that means I'm scared because I don't feel prepared. And if I don't feel prepared, what do I need to do to get prepared?
Mm-hmm. What about yourself inspires you?
That I have the ambition to want to try to do stuff in life. So on my website, I've calculated out over the years that I've written must have been something like 2 or 3 million words over the last 6 and a half years.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's a lot. that's that's more than uh, uh, many people. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I don't mean that to like
To brag.
clown on people. Yeah, brag. What I mean is more of like, I wanted to do something, And
Yeah.
I like that I pretty much was like, yeah, let me go do that.
How do you react in uncomfortable situations?
So in my 20s, I definitely felt a lot more anxiety. So due to circumstances inside of and outside of my control, I've had to adapt and overcome that. Through all of that, I learned like, oh, I have a problem with anxiety. And a lot of that is because of perfectionism.
Mm.
So I would worry about saying the right thing to the right person and getting the right reaction. I would say that the difference between my 20s, when that was when I received like this massive prescription for Ativan, which is a benzodiazepine, of
Mm.
like just a 30-day supply. Take all of this, and this was 5 years into my sobriety from alcohol and cannabis. I celebrate 10 years in April of 2023. So I've
Nice.
already, thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long road. When I'm fearful of something, I think of, well, why am I fearful of it? What am I overlooking? What am I missing? And what can I do differently to maybe say, okay, I'm fearful of this. Well, what why am I fearful of that? Versus 6 years ago when, yeah, like it was about yeah, 6.5 years ago when I had that all that benzodiazepine. I was like, okay, well, this isn't fixing the problem. This could easily turn into addiction
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not careful. The thing that sobriety definitely has helped me realize is when I encounter anything like that, it's like, oh, I recognize this. I need to make sure to protect myself so I don't do any damage. Is something that sobriety has helped me a lot with. Now, when I encounter problems, like I say, I will look to see like what can I do preemptively. So that's how I address stress now. It's just okay. I got to do this. How am I going to do it?
When was the last time you were validated?
That's a tricky question. Collaborating on the podcast with Bella Beluga and Itty, that we both we three we both as in they kind of together. We all like the direction we're going with the podcast now. We all like how we're planning things. So we provide validation for each other that there are no red flags. There are no kind of like, hey, you did something kind of not so cool there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's kind of the validation that I like in terms of professional environments. And well, a trick question or trick answer here too, Silverstorm. I bet you're not going to see this one coming, but
Uh-oh.
you've been validating me throughout this entire thing by saying good answers. And when I miss the mark, rather than just kind of like assuming that I'm just a big old dum dum, you're just like, I think we should try to answer that again. I'm like, oh, okay, oops.
Well, I'm glad I could do that for you.
Yeah, so you've been validating me throughout this entire recording. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Outside of race, gender, and career, how would you describe yourself?
As Zombie Pepper.
I figured that that would be your answer. I
Haha.
That's okay. I'll accept it. But I want to say that I really liked. Do you still have that slogan in Discord where you are a square entity in a round world?
Oh yes, that was my old bit. Because yeah, that definitely describes who I am as a person. In a circular world, I am a square, which means that I do not fit in many places, which is part of the what I don't like about myself in my 20s answer,
Mm.
was because I was in a world of circles. I was in groups of circles, and here I am a square. I don't fit in at all. So I could do things like go into communities where there are larger circles and I'm a smaller square, so I can fit, right? Like in this
Mm-hmm.
example here, if all of these circles need to be X size, then I can fit in because I'm a small little square. So cool, I fit. But only through realizing that the reason why I don't fit in is because I am trying to do things that don't match. I'm trying to get into game development when I'm a writer.
Mm.
Those can match up, but that's basically getting into a space where I can fit in a little bit more. But they talk about Unity, they talk about Unreal, they talk about programming, they talk about GitHub, whereas I talk about linguistics and analysis of reality. So
Mm-hmm.
there is some overlap, to be clear, and especially games writing. You think like, well, that's the example, but that's just a smaller square or circle that fits in closer to that which is me, but there's still bits where I have to fold in and I have to do all that. So the thing that I'm looking for now is I'm just doing my own thing. I'm living my own life. I'm doing art when I feel like it, kind of going back over here, doing art when I feel like it, podcasting, video games, writing whenever I feel like it. And the people that vibe with me, the people that empathize and say, I don't get it fully, but I get it enough to agree with you,
Mm-hmm.
then those are the people that I like to hang out with. I don't know if people are squares like me. I don't know if they're circles like others. I don't know if they're rhombi. I don't know
Triangles.
triangles. But I just know that whatever community I fit into, I know I fit in best when there are other people, not just squares, not just circles, not just triangles. When I can meet people from all different perspectives, I find that those diverse environments are the most inclusive for me.
I wanted to ask because I last time I asked this, I really liked your explanation, so I kind of want it here. Why a square? Why zombie paper?
Actually, the anniversary of me drawing the face was 4 years ago in October. Um,
Nice.
so it was for I was part of a team, and they were like, "Hey, you gotta have like an avatar or something, so you can be part of the team, so we
Mm-hmm.
know who you are."
Easy to
Uh,
recognize.
Easy to recognize. So they were like, you got to have an avatar. So I opened up Paint. I was like, what colors do I like? I like the green, the lime green, the B5E63D green, and the other green. I like that too. So, and then I drew the left eye, the face, and then the right eye. So I was like, there you go. There's the face. There, that's me. That was forged out of many decades of assessing myself. That's your short answer, is the logistical answer. But do you want the more metaphorical answer?
Yes.
So I'm zombie paper, but the zombie paper of the year 2000 was significantly different. I went by the name Insignificant Entity at that time. That idea is the notion that the work that I do or the comments that I make is the secondary proponent or the secondary aspect of the primary, which is what I'm saying or what's happening here. So you listen to this podcast and who I am is irrelevant compared to what I'm saying. To say what I'm saying is informed through a lifetime of experience, but to have that kind of fundamental perspective, like, don't focus so much on me, focus on what I'm saying, was that aspect of insignificant entity. Now, cut to 2008, where I tried to join Rate Your Music, and they said, oh, we need at least 3 letters for our usernames because I was going by IE. So
Mm.
then I went with, okay, what's a longer version of IE in a different context? So zombie paper. It's from Earthbound. It's a plot point for those that haven't played it. It's a plot point for those that have played it. It's kind of a funny inside joke for folks. Like people are like, "Oh, zombie paper from Earthbound, right?"
What is something that scares you?
You never say stuff like that. You don't know who's watching this. You don't know who's listening to this.
Why not?
Well, then they know what to take advantage of you about.
But you're aware of it, so you know what to look out for.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a past example of something I have overcome, so that way I'm not worried about it now. So I
Sure.
think that's the more of the spirit of it. Um, I was scared about being misunderstood.
Mm.
That was something I was very worried about. Now I realize more of the context that I'll always be misunderstood. You'll always be misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing in reality that is more reliable than being misunderstood. That's all of communication, is trying to understand someone through misunderstanding and asking for clarification.
What is the hardest thing you've ever had to overcome?
Becoming zombie paper.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How so?
Because it took a lot of self-interrogation for me to realize that I was fundamentally unhappy with my life about 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the question of why. Why am I unhappy with myself? What is different about the me that I should be and the me that I am to where I'm so fundamentally unhappy with life? But to summarize briefly, I was very unhappy at a job I was working at. I was feeling very, this was after my derealization moments.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting back into reality again, I was like, oh, I don't like, I'm stressed out about the job because I actually don't like it. So then it's like, okay, what do I do to fix this? Well, by chance, I happened to do a float tank session. And so I'll go ahead and answer that for those in the audience that don't know what float tanks are.
Float tanks are cool. They're
Have you been in
neat.
one?
I want to be in one, but I haven't.
They are they're among the most fundamentally positive experiences I've ever had in my entire life. I credit float tanks for being who I am today. The float tank helped me realize that I was doing the kind of career IT goonery where you go into a job, you do the best you can, you basically high score all your stats, you put in your 40 hours worth of work, and you do whatever you need to do to succeed. You get your promotions, and I was
Mm-hmm.
extremely miserable. I was like, I'd been doing that. I'd been chasing that my whole life because I was told, hey, you got to have a good job. You got to have this and that. So
Mm-hmm.
I did. And on the outside, I was successful, but on the inside, I was very miserable. So the way that this float session took place was, in the first 5 minutes, I realized I hate my job. I got to quit. So
Mm-hmm.
that is the impetus for the rest of the session, which is, how do I quit my job? How do I survive? What do I do? And that interrogation of myself and my mind to figure out, what kind of resources do I need to figure out? Who do I contact? What kind of things do I need to sort through? Got me on the path of going into a different direction with my career, which ended up working out very well for me up until becoming disabled. And now that I'm basically getting to the point where I can work again,
Which I'm really
I'm
glad to
gonna
hear about.
thank you. Yeah, that was a long, arduous process that is not related to the answer here, but what is related is that, yeah, I deeply disliked myself up until realizing that the reason why I did was because I was chasing after a version of myself that is not authentic to myself.
So the hardest thing you had to go through was
So figuring out what I disliked about myself and why, and having the courage to fix that.
what frustrates you the most about life?
This will be a slightly political answer.
Okay.
Um, so content warning on that for politics.
Uh-huh.
I am frustrated by the notion that we can't work together, but instead actively work against each other for a lot of things that I feel should be fairly standardized, in that uh, I live in the United States. I live in perhaps the most industrialized and perhaps the best country in the world, and yet in my part of the world, in the greater Seattle area, we have a large homeless population.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having talked to homeless people and having interacted with them, um, they are not a monolith. I think that in general, I feel like being homeless should be a choice. I feel like if you want to be homeless because I met a Unix admin that was just like, yeah, I don't want to be part of that rat race. Okay,
Okay.
cool. Like
That's yeah, that's your prerogative.
yeah, I validate you as a human being. I respect that you had this choice. Uh, I can't give you a lot of money. I can't give you a lot of food, but I respect you. If the person is able to get by, okay, what can I do to help with a little bit of effort? Listen to your story. Okay, cool. I can do that. Um, but I feel it is a fundamental failure of America to have people that are homeless, to have resources that are available, and yet not be able to ensure that all people that want to be homed are capable of being homed, that we have to worry about getting a job. That should just be something that we all can do. As far as getting a good job, I mean, hey, that's going to take some work and time. But if I want to go out there and get a job and it takes me months and months, I
That's
see
a
that
little
as a
bit of a problem.
that's a little bit of a problem. And so that's where I say that from a political perspective, I'm very annoyed when I hear certain perspectives that say that no, that's actually a really good thing. like,
Um, okay.
okay, that's how you think.
That's
Okay,
an
fine.
interesting point of view. Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I tend not to engage with people politically like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are many people that feel like that I'm wrong. That many
Yeah.
people that feel like no, they deserve that. Or it's like I wish that nothing like that ever happens to you. Not in any kind of mean way, but just like as soon as you experience any degree of hey, I could be homeless. I
It's
don't like that.
terrifying.
Yeah,
it's
yeah. So
it's absolutely terrifying.
it frustrates me that that we have a war on drugs,
And the
but
drugs
we
are
also
winning.
the drugs are winning. The pharmaceutical companies are pushing a harmful dichotomy where I talked to this was in late 2020. I was talking to a nurse that was saying that their son had just gotten out of surgery and the son was not given any pain medication for like a I think it was like a tooth operation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of these like, what the hell? That's the one time where he would be given that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the nature of like, oh, all pain medication is harmful, so we can't give you any pain medication. And there's some doctors that are just like, here's a 30-day supply, shut up and get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that sort of opposite end of the spectrum that we don't have the kind of notion of like, hey, you're given this prescription. Here is also an addiction counselor to just talk, just to like have a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
talk about like how many do you take today, how many do you take yesterday, how many do you have left.
Yeah.
So to notice anything like that, when I was going through a lot of my disability, it was a lot of really intense pain for 2 years, over 2 years. I had to manage that. I had to learn I can't get hooked on anything because it's not going to be available at the local store. I can't
Yeah.
go buy any of this. So
Yeah, that's tough.
I feel like that's a fundamental failure of the American society that should be the best country in the world, where if we figured out how to take care of our people from housing, food, addiction, and all of that, then hell yeah, we'd be the best country in the world. I understand people want to save their money and be lean on taxes. I understand all of that notion because there's probably a lot of tax bloat and all that. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know enough political theory or political science to know what to do to fix it. But I think that having even a conversation like this to talk about where are the stress points, and to say that then can enable us to think of, yeah, we could probably work on that a little bit more. And that's kind of why I encourage people to look to see how can you donate to resources in the area of, like, if you have a lot of food, where's your local food bank? Can you
Mm,
drop off food? Because it was one of those things where you think about, like, a lot of us are one or two steps away from that, and how can
yeah.
we help with that? I think is a really good thing. So if you have abundance and you've saved up enough where you feel comfortable, you have a good life going, or like look to see what can you fix in this place.
Even if you like, donating to a food bank or donating money, I donate blood. That's another thing you can do if you have the time and capacity for needles. Is blood's really important, and people need it. And if you can donate blood, that's a really great thing to do. What excites you the most?
The most is when I am in the process of writing. I
Mm,
would say that fundamentally, I get the most joy and the most excitement out of life when I'm in the process of writing whatever it is I'm writing each day. Just there's a certain point, I think about 2/3 of the way through, where everything's firing all cylinders and I'm deeply in tune with my inner self. I am one with who I am.
what is something you are proud of?
So I'm proud of, I would say, most of the recordings I've done over the years. I would say all the essays I've written over the years. I'm proud of the first novel I wrote.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's only somewhat of the answer. That's only half of the answer. The other half is I'm proud of the progress I've made in my life. I'm proud of the mental hurdles I've overcome, the failures I've made. I'm not proud of having made those failures. Say, for example, my sobriety. I'm not proud that I had to become sober. I'm not proud of the circumstances through which I realized, oh, I'm actually a real fucking asshole that no one likes. So I should probably not act that way.
Should probably change that.
I could probably better my life. But
Uh-huh.
what is cool is realizing, yeah, April is going to be 10 years. Like that's a long time
That's
of,
very impressive.
because especially with pain management, like that was a circumstance around April. You have 420, brr, 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 you have
Mhm.
people smoking weed, especially around then. So April 2021, it was like, well, I don't want to engage with that. I want to see what I can figure out outside of that. 2022 was like, okay, I've dealt with this for another year. How can I fix this? And so a lot of that was overcoming my cannabis anxieties about, like, why do I not like this? What is really going on here?
Mm.
So I would say that I'm almost prouder of things like that, of being willing to ask myself, okay, what is really the problem here? What is really going on? And fixing that versus just like, I made a thing. Here, look at this thing I made. Like, people can make stuff all the time, but fixing your major problems in life is really, really heckin' cool.
What is your most prized possession and why?
So that is an interesting question to ask someone like myself, who I was a former hoarder throughout my entire life. And
Mm.
now I am someone who is very much, I wouldn't say anti-materialistic, but I would definitely say that I don't value materialism. One might say your copy of Earthbound, uh, cart only at the
Mm.
moment,
Mhm.
is your prized possession. People could tell me because Earthbound is a rare game, thanks to the Starman.net community for driving out the price on that. So that could be my most valuable possession. But for me, even though that was the game that got me into literature, that got me into the path I am in today, even though that is where my namesake derives from, it's just another cartridge. It's just another piece of plastic that happens to be worth more money than the piece of plastic that's next to it.
How do you take care of yourself?
What I do is I constantly ask myself how I'm doing,
Hmm.
and I constantly figure out, am I doing things well or not well? Well, to checking in to see like, how are you doing? What's going on? That sort of thing. So
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you do that.
thank you.
I do that. I think for myself a lot too. I was like, I'm doing a lot of self monitoring a lot, and I'm trying to give myself a lot of grace for like if I'm not feeling it, that's okay. I don't need to feel
Yeah.
it.
Well, speaking of this as well, do you mind if I step away for like 5 or less minutes?
Sure.
Thanks. I will be right back.
Okay, we're gonna take a little bit of a break.
Hey, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
How was your break?
It was really good. It's one of those. I will say that part of self care includes noticing when you have a problem you need to tend to, figuring out the priority of that event, and then depending on that nature, you say, can I defer that for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, or do I need to tend to that immediately? And that situation was more of an immediate thing then.
Mm-hmm.
So
No
yeah, I'm
problem.
back.
When are you the happiest?
When I'm writing,
Okay, that's what I thought.
uh, yeah, that was like, I think I already answered
I
that,
think
but
you
it's
did,
also,
but that's okay.
but I can give this as so this is something I've come up with as general kind of. So I don't give unsolicited advice.
Mm-hmm.
So this, don't take this as unsolicited advice. Take this as more of like a guideline through which I learned about what makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
So this notion is basically the idea where if you have a normal work week, so you work 40 hours doing your job and you're kind of miserable there because you don't like it too much. So, okay, so you have your weekends, right? It could be
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, Sunday. If you work retail, it could be any day of the week. Um, so your first day, you're probably going to be spending like cleaning up around your place or doing groceries or whatever. So let's say your Saturday is your work weekend, a day where you're fixing up something, or you're doing something of some capacity where you need to attend to it. So okay, cool. What are you doing on your other day off? Now, a lot of people might just rest. They might play a video game. Might watch a TV show or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. That's good. However, I like to think of it like, if you are fundamentally unhappy with your life, if you feel like you can't derive any pleasure from your life, this is not medical advice. So don't take it as such. This is not in place of going to a psychologist to talk about what kind of things might be going on with your life. It's just more of, for me, my general discontent in life, my general
Mm-hmm.
unhappiness. So what I realized was like, okay, if I have that idle Sunday, what if I did something with that day? What if I made something that could make me happy? What
Mm-hmm.
would that be? So that eventually I realized was the writing stuff. So
Mm.
which eventually turned into the podcasting, art, all that kind of junk there. So
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff that I like to do sometimes, but maybe not as much as writing. So that was the route through which I experimented to find my happiness,
Mm-hmm.
and that involved also like, do I like to draw? I do, but this is the first time I've really done any kind of big drawing since the last time I worked on that album cover. Otherwise, I do little bits of drawing here and there. Um, so yeah, I'd say something like that. I'd say like, for me, I found I experimented to find what I find happiest in life. Oh, this is a good example of something that made me really happy. If you want to hear it,
Sure.
so I got into doing podcasting because I was doing a random video game play along kind of a thing. It was
Mm-hmm.
this game of Reedy, which is just a plant growing game.
Mm.
So I basically for like 2 hours I was just growing plants and hanging out.
Oh, that sounds great.
So it was a really good fun time. But through the nature of just broadcasting, it was like, well, what are we going to talk about?
Mm.
I am talking about someone that was a bit of a troll in an environment I was in,
Mm.
and showing like how that was handled, what all happened. And this was in a community with a bunch of broadcasters that were all like, we get trolls and we don't know what to do.
Mm.
Like Twitch has no training material on that. There's no like guided course of like, what do you do when someone is a bully to your members of your community? What do you do on that?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just one of those, like, that was the first time that I think some of these people were able to publicly say like, yeah, this is a problem. I don't know what to do. I want to play a video game and have a good performance, a good time with everyone. Then what happens when someone comes in and says something stupid or says a slur? What do I do?
Yeah, that's
No one
tough.
really, no one really thinks about it. So in that example, I was doing a little bit of the puppetry stuff that I tend to do with OBS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit of an OBS witch when it comes to like, you see all sorts of weird stuff going on with my recordings and just like, what the heck? Okay, that's happening.
Yeah.
So then after that, I had two separate people that, these are both people whose names I'm not going to say, but they are people with communities of some number quantifiably more than mine, that
Mm-hmm.
were both like, wow, that was really cool what you're doing there. That was like, we need more of that.
Mm.
I was just like, sure.
Validation. Nice.
It was that validation. When other people tell me, yeah, that was really inspirational for me. That really helped me go along in a good route where now I think more about moderation. I'm a little bit more able to handle this. I'm able to discuss that with my moderators or my audience. I feel a little bit more equipped to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, I can make a difference.
Yeah.
Why don't I do that versus play video games poorly?
Well, so that's all the questions. So if you have watched the entire video, you should probably go subscribe to Zombie Paper. He's on YouTube. Sorry, they are on YouTube, and they're neat.
Thank you. Yeah, my gender stuff is kind of weird, so don't
I
worry about it
forget
too much.
sometimes, and I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Thank you, Zombie Paper, for doing this with me. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed.
I did. I had quite a lot of fun. You asked some really good questions. I really liked the level of insight that you had with asking these questions.
Thank you, the listener, for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, I don't know how to end this, so I'm just gonna end it. Bye.